Congressional leaders want to vote by Friday on the newly proposed budget deal. It sets spending levels at $1.02 trillion for 2014. It also sets aside $45 billion to replace sequester cuts and $20 billion for deficit reduction. Some analysts say news that the credit rating agency Standard & Poor's lowering its U.S. growth forecast could motivate lawmakers to avoid another government shutdown. On Wall Street, the proposed budget deal has received a lukewarm reception. Analysts say it would do nothing to address the debt ceiling looming early next year. Joining us in Washington is Lauren French. She is a reporter for Politico. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to Arise America.
Thanks for having me.
I must say this bipartisan budget deal took me by surprise. First of all, give us just a general view of what's in this deal.
So this is a modest deal, to be sure. This is not a grand bargain. It doesn't deal with entitlements or tax reform, doesn't deal with unemployment insurance. But what it is going to do is going to help Washington avoid another shutdown over spending levels and government funding. So like you said, it's a little bit over $1 trillion deal for spending for next year. It's going to replace those across-the-board sequester cuts, and those replacements are going to come for military spending in some cases, which is very important to both Democrats and Republicans, that the military does not see those across-the-board kind of slash-and-burn cuts.
You know, budget fighting has been fought so harshly, particularly along party lines, and it would seem that anything that they could come up with that both sides would support would not make much of anybody happy. Rand Paul came out against this. Even Nancy Pelosi seemed lukewarm. But what's the chances that it will be passed?
House leadership is actually very confident this bill will pass. Paul Ryan, who is the House Budget Committee chairman, who crafted this with Patty Murray, is a very respected figure in the House Republican Party, and he is going to bring a lot of Republicans along with him. So no one's crazy about the deal, but that's what a bipartisan deal these days really will turn into. No one's going to be crazy about it, but they can live with it. So there is confidence that it'll pass when it comes up for a vote.
So what does this mean for some of those big ticket items that you just mentioned in your first answer that are not addressed in this bill? What does it mean for those, such as the long-term tax and spending issues, as well as unemployment benefits, which look like they are going to expire?
Well, House Democrats want unemployment insurance to be included in a vote on this. They're still working behind the scenes on that, especially after Republicans announced that a doc fix, that Medicare payment fix, could be included in a final deal. So you have House Democrats working to include unemployment insurance. They're going to keep trying to get a vote on that. Whether it'll be successful is a different story. And for larger things like tax reform and entitlement reform, both key priorities for the House, those are probably going to be pushed into next year if they happen at all. House Ways and Means Chairman David Camp still says he plans to hold a markup on tax reform after it was put off the schedule for December by House leadership just because of timing. So those things are a little bit more in flux, and you have different sources saying different things about, for tax reform, whether this budget deal could help it push forward because it's relieving a lot of other economic pressure, or whether it doesn't really help push tax reform forward. So that's still kind of a to be determined effect it will have. But the real effect it's going to have is that we're not going to see, hopefully, more government shutdowns or fights over budgets, because this will set it for the next 2 years.
And of course, this doesn't address at all the debt ceiling, which of course will come the deadline will come again in February. Does the fact that there's a bipartisan proposal for this budget, does that give us optimism and hope for some sort of resolution for the looming debt ceiling?
Anytime you could have members of Congress, especially in this Congress, come together, work together, and craft a bipartisan deal, that's helpful. You had so much partisanship and so much distrust between the two sides after the government shutdown that there was just very low expectations for this budget deal to even happen, and then Paul Ryan and Patty Murray surprised everyone. So it does help that people are building bonds and that no one's going to feel with this budget deal that they were kind of taken out behind the shed and beat up and, are really compromising on their core principles. They may not love it, but they're not giving away the House. So in that way, it might help. And there's going to be a lot of breathing time, because if this budget deal does pass, they won't have to deal with a budget negotiation in January, giving everyone kind of breathing room to get ready for the next debt ceiling fight.
It is a bit of a relief. Lauren French, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.